Obviously, we have a lot of bilingual closers, bilingual underwriters that can kind of help coach people along the way so they can teach it to the closer. And then our closers are the ones, at the end of the day, they're working with the buyers and really kind of helping them understand some of the stuff that they may not. But always having a trusted attorney and lender are the ones who are really going to help them understand that process.
How does, because sometimes people say, oh, I'm going to buy cash, they're not going to show up with a bunch of cash. Can somebody send, let's say I'm buying a property, but you're going to send the money?
So there's gift funds. There's ways we can go about verifying the gift funds. And have some people send from like their 401k account and then another bank account. You can send multiple wires from different accounts. There's different ways to work around how to get the funds.
What's the job of the title company when they receive the money?
To make sure it's safe in a good place, and then to disperse. So we're the fiduciary that takes the money in and disperses the money out throughout the transaction.
So you guys hold the escrow, right?
So now that, a lot of the attorneys and realtors used to take the escrow for earnest money, and now they've realized that that was a big headache. So now that's something we really streamlined to make sure that we have all the money at closing. Maybe the realtor forgot to bring it, and now we run into an issue. So that's something we've done to streamline.
It's much better. Alta policy.
An Alta policy is your insurance policy. They just call it American Land Title Association. Insurance is what title insurance is run through. So,
if you're investors, can you suggest or you can ask for endorsements? Or
yeah, you can have like a location endorsement, and there's other special endorsements to kind of give you protection around. We're done in the commercial space than the residential.
Sure.
Yeah, there are a lot of different endorsements out there that you can have if you need.
I mean, do you work with a lot of investors in, what's the myth, about title? We all want to save money, right?
Yeah.
And we try to cut corners, right?
Yeah.
But what's a lot of people doesn't want to go through title. Hi everybody, my name is Antonio Hernandez with FLIPLATINO Legendarios. Today I have the pleasure and the honor to have one of my good friends, and not only a good friend, but the account executive for Fidelity National Title. Brandon, welcome to FLIPLATINO Legendarios.
Well, thank you for having me, Antonio. Really excited to sit down and talk today.
Sure. Hey, Brandon, how do you start, or what's the beginning of, your relationship with Fidelity?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, mother-in-law was working with Fidelity, and the real estate wealth that is available, it was something that was intriguing to me. She brought me over to Fidelity. I started out as a closer and kind of worked my way into the sales arena, and I've really enjoyed my 11 years now.
Okay. Do you work with a lot of investors, a lot of people in this?
For the last 5 years, and doing commercial, residential, and it's been very exciting to learn more about the investor world, and I'm continuing to learn every day, especially.
Oh, thank you. What kind of services does a title company provide?
The lender on a deal where the lenders get protection, as well as when you're buying the home, you get an owner's policy, which gives you protection on your property. Make sure that there's no liens or any other fraud or anything like that on your files.
What's the lender's policy and what's the owner's policy?
So the owner's policy protects specifically when you're buying the home to make sure that you're buying the right property. The seller had the right to sell it to you. There's no easements and any liens, anything like that, because when you're buying a property, it transfers over from the property to property. It doesn't matter if somebody deeds it out using a quitclaim deed, for example. So that's why you want to be able to get that type of policy is for you, the buyer, and the lender's policy is for the lender's protection on that side of it.
So every time somebody buys a property, it should...
Yes, the amount of risk you take without getting an owner's policy, making sure that the property is free and clear, is something that could totally derail your investment and your wealth. So I think it's a...
Okay, so, sometimes some investors, they buy a bid and, they think they're good,
Yes.
It's good to go.
Mm-hmm.
They should buy a property through the title company and get an owner's policy?
The risk you take with somebody just transferring with a quitclaim deed is way too risky in my mind, and I believe title insurance is the reason that gives you the protection of your wealth. If you're making a big investment and you want to make this long term, you don't want any risks along the way, and this is something that completely removes that risk with the due diligence and the title insurance that's provided.
What other risks does the title company protects the client or the investor or the
mortgages, outstanding balances, water bills? There's a lot of different disputes that could come up from transferring something without, and clearing title with an experienced lender or attorney ahead of time to make sure that you're actually getting a free and clear property.
What happened during the search process? People doesn't see that, because it's behind. Yeah. So what does it mean, to do a title search?
So yeah, we have our underwriters that go in, they search the names, the judgments, what they find out of the water. They want to make sure that they're getting all the attention drawn to that property that's through the history of the property. So it's been transferred correctly, there's no break in the chain, and then that way when you're getting the property transferred to yourself that it's free and clear, it's yours, there's no issues, or about exactly what you're owning. That way when you fix and flip it and you're selling it or refinancing it, it makes it a smoother process on the back end.
Does, what other stuff, other things it'll show when you do a title search? It can show if they owe child support, if they owe taxes to the state, or
it'll definitely show tax, IRS liens, state tax liens. It'll show any other type of lien if you have one with the city, the municipalities. The other ones would be missing heirs is something else. If there's a deed that was transferred with a quitclaim deed prior, we can go back and make sure that the person actually selling it is actually the person that's supposed to be selling it, so then someone can't come back and create a lawsuit for you later.
That's good for
it. Text you when you get that. It helps you with your fighting the case and legal fees as well, which is another main perk for getting that.
Do you know up to how much they can protect?
Policy is based on your purchase price, so anywhere from under $200, and then it can go up to millions and millions of dollars. So it just depends.
Why is it so important to an investor or somebody to have this insurance? Because some people doesn't want to pay, and they go into right.
Yes.
Let's say what means if I don't get the owner policy and something pops up later on, who's responsible?
It's going to be the property owner, because every time that there's a lien or anything on that property, it sticks with the PIN number.
Okay.
So even though you move out of the house and I'm moving in, whatever issues or problems that were on that file are now your responsibility. So somebody could come back and say, hey, you've owed $30,000 from the previous owner, and now you're at risk for that. We see many deals every week where people are losing properties and taking on excessive fees that were from a previous owner because they didn't properly transfer title by using title insurance.
So it's not a good idea just to buy a property with a quitclaim deed.
It's not worth the risk. And anything you do in life, you really don't want to take a shortcut, right?
Sure.
You want to make sure you're giving yourself protection, and title insurance is the protection that you need in order to create less risk for yourself.
Other than the title insurance, and what else it's search and the process during the search.
So it's just the whole background of the property, surveys to make sure that the land that you're buying is actually your land, or you're not sharing it with a neighbor. Maybe a fence is over the line, something like that. So you're fully aware of the property that you're purchasing. And then the name searches, which is when we make sure that there's no liens, judgments, tax issues. Those are the main issues that we are searching on the back end for my production team to make sure that we're smooth at closing time.
Is this title insurance a one-time payment, or can be done every time you?
So when you purchase the property, you pay that one-time fee, however much that is, and it lasts for the lifetime that you're in the home. So instead of fees or anything like that, you just pay it once, and then you have the protection and less risk. So it's really a no-brainer. In the world, when you're trying to build wealth, you don't want to take those risks where it could start damaging your wealth that you're trying to build.
What happens if somebody, let's say they have title insurance with you guys, and let's say the title company means who will pay that?
So once that happens, they would file a claim with Fidelity, and then Fidelity will be responsible for the claim, and we would be also responsible for covering the legal fees for the purchaser, because we were the ones that made the mistake. When we produce that policy, that is the insurance policy that we rely on, and that that if anything else comes up post-closing, that it could be a claim, and that's something that Fidelity would take care of for you.
Is that happen?
Yeah, it happens a lot more than you think. An insurance company can't be an insurance company without claims. So unfortunately, there are mistakes in human error. Yeah. And so we do pay claims. It's not a very difficult process, and it's something that we try not to have, that often, but it does happen. And when it does, the point of the insurance policy is to protect yourself from that.
And protect for
it can protect against fraud. So by doing it in the correct way with title insurance, you eliminate mitigate Thing is necessarily getting full protection from fraud with this day and age, but by doing the title insurance process and going through closing, the steps that we go through pretty much help mitigate it to a very small amount where they're going to have fraud.
And that's something happened,
and obviously with a quick claim deed, there's a lot more signing as the person that owns it.
With the technology and with this stuff,
there's a lot more seller fraud going on right now, where people kind of like they own the property, go in and sell it. You're getting a great deal. You're like, this is awesome, from somebody else in documents. So that's the biggest thing that's been on the rise that we've seen is the seller fraud.
So people do that.
You have to always verify the seller. You can't trust a realtor. You have to figure out, meet face to face, and really identify who that person is. You contact a representative, you have them run a search to see who actually owns the property, and then at that point you can verify, have someone show an identification in order to kind of prove that they are the actual owner.
And do you think as an investor you should have an attorney and you should have a title company?
Yes, and I think you should have a trusted team in general. You should have a trusted lender, a real estate, a title partner, because if the more partners and the people that are doing these regularly, when they're all working together, and then it's always going to make your life easier and smoother because we know what we're doing, and it gives you the protection knowing, hey, they know what they're doing. All this stuff is going to take away less risk, and it's going to make a smoother, more efficient process.
Sure. Investor look for, before buying, let's say, an off-market deal.
Okay.
Because there is a lot of people, wholesalers these days, selling off-market deals. What they should do?
Taxes is always a big one. Water that hasn't been paid, any type of liens from the IRS or state. Those are the main four, I'd say, that usually pop up when I get somebody to ask for a title search, like, taxes in the last 5 years, and now you're on the hook for it if you want to take that deal on.
So how do taxes, can affect this deal?
So your taxes are taxes. Antonio will go to a sale, attack those taxes, and then the taxes back to Antonio along with a fee for him being able to take that fee or take on those sold taxes. So there's a lot of different ways that taxes can affect you, and that's why you need to get a good title search and use title insurance in order to know what you're getting into before you're doing a deal. Because numbers mean everything in an investment, right?
Sure,
so if you lose out on some numbers.
It's Fidelity National Title.
The largest title insurance company in the world. We're number 253 in the top 500. So we are the biggest, and that is another protection for you, knowing that if there is ever a claim or anything like that, we're going to be able to take care of it for you, and some other title companies do that for you.
What other titles do you guys own in the, let's say, in the Chicago area?
Companies, but we have them in all 52 states, but it's the Fidelity National Financials, the company, and we're the Fidelity National Title Group that is states.
It's a good idea to be with the biggest?
I think so. We have deep pockets. I think if you need some protection, I think we're there.
Right.
And we have the experience. We see every type of wholesaler. We see those on a regular basis. Our production team, our managers, our reps, everyone's familiar with those type of transactions. It's not like a one-off here or one-off there, which makes everything go smoother.
You were talking about wholesalers. You guys do a lot of these wholesales?
Yeah, we do. Many of them, I'd say at least probably one a day we do them, especially within the Chicago market. So we're doing the A to B, B to C's, the assignments. We make sure we give all the parties to correctly protect everyone involved, be transparent, and make sure everything's flowing smoothly for you. Transaction like that.
Do you guys do
double closings? We do those. I mean, we probably do 10 to 15 a month, if not more, depending on the type of or time of year that you're in. It's something we're very familiar with and we're very good at, and it's something that you guys in that world should be doing. And like Antonio,
does have a good relationship with the title company, with a good lender? You talk about a team, no? How important is for an investor to have a good team?
I think it's the number one. I think being able to have a team in it's always good to have around you. So when you have someone that you have a title partner and you have you as the investor, it's going to be a win-win. And add in a real estate attorney, depending on the type of transaction. If they're all working in unison, it just makes your life easier. It makes the deal go smoother.
What's what quick claim deed? Because a lot of people doesn't know. We're talking about with a quick claim deed.
Yeah, so a quick claim deed, you're basically just transferring the property from one person to another with no consideration. So it's it's used often where I see it where it's an effective is from an individual to a C, maybe it is things like that where you're moving people around. There's no reason in between family. There's no reason to have any consideration to actually go through with title insurance because you're just kind of changing the name. Whereas if you're actually changing the full transfer of property, that's when there's something like that for the protection.
So if you buy in for somebody else who you don't know, it's better to go through a.
Secure that for you, correct?
Is the search process today, and then I'm gonna sell it in 3 months?
Mhm.
It's get to do it again.
And now once you get the title insurance, because it's gone through the title insurance process, as soon as you're done with your flip or you're ready to refinance, you're now everything's ducks in a row, everything's clean, and it makes that second transaction even easier.
And it's everybody wants a good title.
That's right.
Or selling again, you should have a title insurance for that.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that.
It's safe to transfer, only the quick lane deed without a title company if I'm buying, wholesaler.
Yeah, if you're buying from someone you don't know or really trust in terms of just trying to transfer an entity name, I think that's the only time, or from a family to family, I think that's what should really be used. In a transaction, we're doing wholesaling or double closings, I think you should always have, just to make sure that everything has been done correctly before then on the property, because that will then eventually take care of in the first place.
Yeah, and we say, just because a deed doesn't mean, you receive a clean ownership.
Correct.
Right?
You receive ownership, but that doesn't mean you don't receive a clean ownership or any risk that was on the property. Lien, you owe 4 years of taxes, and now all of a sudden those numbers don't process with title insurance.
So, put it in another way, is very important to have a title company or title search, when you're buying a property, especially from somebody else. Right?
Yeah, for a protection factor and to mitigate risks when you're investing in anything. So if the title company can do that for you, which is what we do on a daily basis, it's definitely something I think you should do under.
Sure. Talking about, people talk about 1031 exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain?
It's basically a way to help yourself with taxes and relieve the capital gains. And it is something that you do through a qualified intermediary. And there's a lot of different steps that we can go through. If you want to learn more about that.
These exchanges, the taxes, or it's how long do you have?
You have depending on how long you keep that investment. Eventually, you will have to pay some taxes, but it does mitigate some of the taxes. The process from multiple properties, multiple 1031s. It's definitely going to save you some money in taxes.
And there is some rules. Right?
Yeah, a property 45 days in advance, and then you have 180 days to sell that property, and you have to use a third party because you, the investor, cannot touch that money at all. This is the money you want. So you want to get with a qualified intermediary, which every title company, Fidelity uses IPX. Get with them. They'll help you through the process in order to make sure you have all your ducks in a row, because you need to be very structured. There are no exceptions with 1031s. It's very organized, and you have to follow a certain process.
Is this good for new investors or for more investors with a little bit more
I think
experience?
it's good for all. It has to be the same $1,000 investment. You have to be able to transfer it to a $300,000. Now, if you have $1 million investment, you could get three $300,000 investments.
Okay.
So it could be for somebody who has a big portfolio or somebody who has one investment they're looking to do with it.
Okay. Can you do a 1031 exchange after a flip, or after
So no, but the B is definitely where you can utilize a 1031.
Okay. Let's say how long it takes to do this process.
It's very quick. Sometimes people aren't very aware of this, so then they find out about it, and in days we are contacting our 1031 exchange. They work with the parties right away, get all the documents set up, and go along. But if you're prepared and ahead of time, you're looking for a property, it probably takes you a couple months, a window, and then you're probably looking at, I'd say, a few months if you're doing it the proper way.
Is this, usually, is it usually done? A lot of people do it.
I don't know if enough people know about it or enough. So I think that's part of the problem. And it depends on where you are in your investment journey. Sometimes it makes more sense just to take the money out, pay a little capital gains, and then go get a different property. 31 is not going to make sense. But if you have a big portfolio and you want to be able to transfer that $1 million down and get more into a different sector, then it makes a
Does a season affect title? It's more expensive during the winter.
Always the same price. So it's always based on purchase price, and our rate cards are always online every year, so you can always go and look and see what the dollar amount is, and then as it
there is other smaller companies probably. Is the prices about the same?
This is really just a commodity. The main thing about title insurance is the customer service you're going to get, the point of contact, having somebody like myself there. So if you need something, you can just give an email and I can take care of it, because we're all selling the same product. We're all within a couple $100 in terms of pricing.
Okay. When you work with wholesalers, how an assignment or a double closing, affects the the title or the title search?
Yeah, so it's all the exact same. It doesn't matter what type of transaction you're doing, whether it's just a regular residential, you're just buying your first single family home, or you're investing. It's all the same process. We do the search on the back end, you do the clearing of the title, you get prepared for closing, you close, and then the file's done, and it's all the same.
How do you know when clean title? Would say, I mean, the underwriter clears everything, or how do you?
So a clean title ideally is once it's ordered by your lender on a refinance or an attorney on a sale, it comes back and everything's clean. You basically have some taxes and things like that. So basically, the first time you get it, never get your closing. When you're selling it on the back end, that's usually always a clean title because it's only been 4, 5, 6 months since you did anything. So maybe there's some things you have to show for construction, what you did on there. There's some documentation you have to show when you're selling. But other than that, it's usually the second deal is always a lot cleaner.
What's a cloud title? You know, people talk about cloud.
Yeah, cloud titles really I would just consider more of like a dirty title, maybe just a different word for it. And that's when there's the liens, the judgments, and all the different problems that are associated with a title that wasn't taken care of ahead of time by using title insurance.
What does it mean? You know, because I see sometimes, you know, that they're looking. What does
so basically that's just how far back the property has been transferred. So it'll show you how many transfers have been in the last 12 months, and the 24 month is how many transfers that property's gone under in that 20.
Usually
The most common in our industry, maybe 5%, or some will maybe not want it at all because they're familiar with it from a previous transaction, or sometimes.
Okay. Who reads the title? I mean, it says, you know, the commitment.
Yeah, so basically when the title order is placed on the attorney would read it, or the lender, and you know, sometimes the lender works with the title company, sometimes the attorney obviously has to communicate with the title company. So it's the seller's attorney and lenders look at the title and find the items that need to be resolved, and then there's always the help of the title company in that process in order to help that stuff get clear.
So let's say, you know, an investor or a regular client doesn't in order to, you know, work with a transaction because probably the title company or the attorney or the lender, they're going to check.
They're the ones, and that's why you have the power team, right? I mean, I didn't know about it ago when I got into it, and the people don't know what title insurance is. And it's very important to have, but the most important part is having the people around you that know all about it, know what to do with it, and then that's why you get your power team and make things smooth.
And obviously, you know, you guys can close in the office and can do a remote closing.
Correct. So here locally in Chicago, we have 25 office locations, and we also have a remote lending center out of to your business, coffee shop, wherever you need. We can set up an after hours closing, Saturday closing, in order to accommodate your schedule and your day job. We can send somebody there, and that fee is included with the pricing. So there's no additional fee for that remote notary as well.
States you guys control, or how many states can, you know, or
50 division itself, we're a little more about 30-ish states where we're kind of direct operations, but Fidelity National Title Group is in all 52 states. So if it's something maybe that I can't handle directly, there's definitely somebody I can find in my network in order to.
Does the remote closer or the, you know, person who's going to the do there, are they, you know, part of the company, or they
sometimes we have our contract closers go out and do that, or sometimes that will go out and facilitate the transaction.
And
we have a very verified list. We go through that. They're all vetted. Everything's good to contact you ahead of time. So they always try to give a 24-hour notice. Hey, this is Brandon James. I'm going to be your mobile notary. Here's my phone number. Do you have any questions? Are we good to go? And kind of build that relationship. Buyer or refinancers.
Yeah, I mean, talking about liens, you know, what kind of liens, you know, usually can be recorded, you know, mechanic lien.
Mechanics lien is usually from construction, but the mechanics lien is the biggest one that a business can do to you. Like if a contractor comes in, the mechanics lien. So the mechanics liens are the most common in terms of the businesses put, and then you have all your liens that would come from IRS, state, municipalities that can also put on liens. So anyone can really put a lien on your property, but they have to have due cause, go through the title search process. You can figure out when there, and you can go ahead and get that cleared up before you're.
Can you record a
partnership agreement? You can do a contract for deed. There's a lot of different other documents and ways to kind of protect yourself to make sure that when the investment's being sold, that you're giving yourself the protection and less risk.
Great. You guys work with investors. What's let's say
our business? It's a growing number. It's usually around the same amount of people, but it's definitely a growing number. and it may even be a little bit higher, maybe. Yeah, and it's like, your regular investor, a commercial investor. Sometimes we don't even know it's really an investor deal. Someone's just kind of buying it. But the percentage of wholesales and double closings and assignments, probably about 10 to 15%.
What do you see mostly? People who's going to live in the property, investors. You guys do industrial.
We see commercial flips. We see commercial. We see that with residential as well. We see all different types. So we see every type of investor transaction that's out there, and that's what makes us feel so confident that we can make it a smooth process for you and for our lender and attorney partners.
Sure. What's the difference between warranty deed and special warranty deed?
They are a little bit different. It's more of an attorney question, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that, but they're really similar. A little bit different verbiage along the way.
What happened if a previous mortgage wasn't properly released and is not entitled?
Okay. Yeah. So that's when obviously it's not the worst thing out there to not have a release, because sometimes lenders are behind. But when you go through the title insurance process, and that's one of the things you clear beforehand, we would then reach out to the lender, or somebody would make sure we get the document and written that the previous pay off their mortgage.
What's an ALTA policy?
An ALTA policy is your insurance policy. So they just call it American Land Title Association is the title.
Okay.
They're the ones that.
If you're investors, can you suggest or you can ask for endorsements or,
a location endorsement, and there's other special endorsements to kind of give you protection around your land. That's usually more done in the commercial space than the residential.
Sure.
But yeah, there are a lot of different endorsements out there that you can add if you need.
Yeah. Do you work with a lot of investors, and what's the myth about title? Because we all want to save money, right?
Well, numbers game, right?
Cut corners, right?
Yeah.
But what's the? A lot of people doesn't want to go through title, and
$1,000 for you to get a one-time payment. It gives you the protection. If all of a sudden you get $8,000, so that $4,000 has basically saved you the $8,000. It's even smoother for you. So it's really a no-brainer, especially when you're dealing with investment properties, wholesaling. Those are always a little bit more difficult of a property. So that's where you need more time and clarity to make sure things are cleaned up before you own it.
Brandon, sometimes, there's states like, I don't know, Wisconsin, where they don't have an attorney. Mm-hmm. Is the same to consult with the title company than consult with an attorney?
Illinois, but Wisconsin, Indiana states. So the title insurance company takes on a little bit more of the work because they have an in-house attorney compared to maybe having an attorney that you just work with that partners with the title. Suggestions and ideas, more information is more better in my world.
If you're crossing a deal, what do you need, in order to go to the closing? The title need to be clean.
So ideally, it should be really simple. Your government issued ID that's unexpired and your funds. And now if it's over $50,000, everything else should be cleared ahead of time. So you have to bring, besides the sign a bunch of documents.
Okay. We talked about this the other day about FinCEN rules, and, they haven't been open.
So there was always ones just for individuals. The FinCEN rule has been around for a little while. It's kind of pushing the new regulatory for LLCs and any type of trust that it's in. So now there's going to be a little more paperwork that needs to be done. And we're in the process of training for that and really automating it so it can be sent to all parties that need to sign ahead of time, get that information sent back to us, and then we report it so we can make it a nice, smooth process.
And this will affect the business as we're doing it, or just mostly
it's more just to make sure that they aren't in the money laundering business, and they have to just kind of showcase what their business is, where they're getting their money from, and then once you can prove that with a couple documents, then all of a sudden that's cleared from.
And this it'll affect people who was buying in cash, or is a little bit more.
It's all for cash. It's all for cash. It's all for cash purchases right now, and that stuff on the other side. But from a title company perspective,
yeah, and we talk about that it's not full enforced yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
we're just starting February to start it, and then March 1st is when we're reporting it officially with the government. So be more information to come on that, and that may be something we can hop on later and talk about too.
How can investors stay compliant, while protecting privacy with this new?
Just really making sure you're doing things the right way and doing it professionally. And as long as you're doing things the right way, the FinCEN guidelines are just going to be just a couple extra pieces of paper that.
So and these are more general question. Sometimes people. When they're and it's over 50,000, you guys require a wire, or
you can bring in after closing Anything higher than that, we would have a wire.
Okay, and it's normal. It's better to call the title company and verify that you're wiring.
The email and always verbally verify with not a number that was on the wire instructions. Look up a branch specifically or a contact that you know. Verify those instructions. The wire fraud mitigation and risk has gone down significantly, but there's still a lot of it out there. So you always have to be on your reading and always.
How do you guys seen wire fraud lately?
We still see some cases of it. Put a lot of safeguards in place with our wire, our secure in here platform where we email it out to the client. They go through 2-code authentication. We've really cut back on that. Lenders sending stuff via email, so it's really putting that much access.
Yeah, and when you talk about two-step, they send an email and then they need to create a password and put
the email and phone number to us. We email it to you. You go in with the 6-digit code. You put that in. Now you know you're in a secure portal that was designed for you.
What else do you think, and people who are buying properties, in title or title insurance?
Protection and risk mitigation, right? So the main reason you want to use it is to prevent yourself from not knowing what's happened on that property before you're going to take ownership of it. So the title insurance process with the closing is definitely the way to protect yourself from future risk.
Who handle the closing, or what's a closer, let's say?
So yeah, they are the ones who are doing the paperwork, coordinating with the lenders, coordinating with the seller's attorneys. They're the ones kind of facilitating everything. They're the ones that organize people to keep everything organized ahead of time to make sure when you show up to sign, they're the person who kind of explaining some of the documents, asking some questions that you may have, make sure things go smoothly.
Yeah. The title get order. Usually how long it takes for the title?
Anywhere between 8 to 72 hours on average. So, you order a title, it hits our production department, it gets released out to you. At that point, there's the clearance, and then there's my collaboration team with the other your lender. Then you end up with the closer, who's the face of all of this, because that's when you come into the transaction, and they're the last person that you see as well, and hopefully making sure that you have a nice, smooth transaction.
How does, because on my cash, they're not going to show up with a bunch of cash. Right?
That's right. We can't do that. So from a cashier, a certified check from a bank, so they'll have to pay transfer.
Can somebody send, probably you're going to send the money?
There's ways we can having sent. Some people send from like their 401k account. You can send multiple wires from different accounts, and they're to work around how to get the funds.
What's the job of the title company when they receive the money?
To hold on to it, to make sure it's safe in a good place, and then to disperse. So we're the fiduciary that takes the money in and disperses the money out throughout the transaction.
So you guys cut the check for the
insurance, we cut the check for the lender, the broker, the buyer, the seller, anybody who's a part of the transaction, surveyor, anybody that's part of the transaction.
So it's a whole team, right? It's not just
exactly. There's so many people in our industry, Fidelity specifically, that go through a transaction that no one sees. And the less you see, really, it means the better job that we did, because really you should just be seeing a closer. Things go well at that point, and then everything's done. And that's always done with a power team around you. Yeah.
These days, when there's a purchase, usually the seller attorney and the buyer attorney, they go to, is still happening, or?
COVID, that's kind of been a change. These sellers aren't really doing it. So they go and meet with their attorney, sign everything. That way the closer has everything done on the seller's side when it comes, which means when the buyer's there, we're just waiting for the buyer and the lender to make things smoother. So it's really sped up the process. Cut there for a second. So it's really sped up the process as long as everybody's in the transaction.
If somebody is in another state, can they close, pre-sign?
Yeah, so they can do either a pre-sign, or we have remote online notarization where you get on the computer and you're sitting face to face with someone. Video conference, you have to identify yourself, go through a few steps, but then it's a notary signature that's on there via the RON program, which is a third party, and then those documents get.
So that's why a lot of people buy from other states and they don't have to.
Yeah, they don't have to fly to Chicago, come here, especially on a cash deal. We're just closing up.
So usually the seller side.
It used to be 100%. Now it's probably 60%. The sellers are not coming to closing. It may even now. There's still the people that still want to come and kind of be a part of the closing.
How can the investors or anybody, your information or title company, it goes through you guys directly, it goes through us, lenders or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, you can always, there's Google searches in order to find a title company, my information as well. But usually if you have the trusted team around you, you don't need to reach out for title because your lender or your seller's attorney are going to already have that contact.
Does the client or borrowers need to talk directly with the title company, or usually it's through the banker?
Yeah, usually they can call and kind of verify some instructions, or maybe we'll contact them to verify. If you're a seller, we have to verify your wire instructions. But for the most part, there's not a ton of communication that needs to be done between a buyer and seller and title, because that's what you have your attorneys and lenders for.
Sure. How do you see the market these days? I mean, from the title company perspective, are you having more closings?
6 to 10% increase this year over last year. Obviously, we're still down. I think we had 100 transactions in DuPage County last year, where we were used to having 12, 13, 15 pre-pandemic. A shortage of inventory, but it is starting to pick up. And I just saw a stat about there's more people with a 6% interest than there is with us. Things are kind of changing.
Sure.
The market's kind of really starting to maybe hopefully pick up here soon.
Do you think 2020 COVID it changed something? I mean, what changes?
Well, basically, it made it where it's harder to downsize. When you're locked in at you're now 5 years into that because you refied then. Do you really want to go out and go from interest and then restart your mortgage again for another 5 years? So it's really kind of landlocked people to where people rather remodel their house, do an addition to their house instead of just moving. Now, you're always going to move for death. There's always going to be certain reasons why you're going to have to move,
sure.
But everyone's not just moving to move like they were during COVID.
Yeah. Do you guys, as a company, change something during or from COVID to now?
Reselling of documents, email closings. We were able to kind of learn a new process at that point, taking in mobile earnest money and a lot of different stuff with earnest money, so people aren't bringing checks in. It's helped streamline a lot of our business. So
on earnest money, what do you guys take? You can.
So we have a picture of a check. We have our ACH option, which is you use a link that's supplied by Fidelity to go through a secure third party. You can drop off a certified check at one of our 25 locations.
You can do GPS.
Provide a label for you to send a check into us. But there's the three major ways are usually check drop off, mobile picture deposit.
And you guys hold the escrow, right?
So now that, a lot of realtors used to take the escrow for earnest money, and now they've realized that that was a big headache. So now that's something we really streamlined to make sure that we have all the money at closing, maybe the realtor. So that's something.
It's much better.
Yeah, for everybody, if we have all the money in one place.
How do you explain that, because something talking about, the escrow money. So when you're buying a property and you're going to put the escrow, then instead of the attorney holding the money, then the title company can hold it.
Yeah, so obviously when you're doing the contract and you're negotiating, you're always has to put down a percentage of money in order to kind of show that they're serious in order to buy to move forward with the transaction. Obviously, there's other things to go through in the meantime, but at the beginning of the contract, you'll bring in X amount of dollars to the title company normally in order to kind of secure yourself in that transaction. Now, if the transaction falls through after inspection, something like that, it's easy for us. We just deposit that money back to you, whichever format you'd prefer. If a check, pick it up or through ACH.
So there is a lot of, let's say, good things about, working with title company, with the power team.
Yeah.
What do you see is the most, let's say, important role for a title company?
The communication with the buyers and sellers if they're at closing, communication with the lenders to collaborate to make sure everything's clear, and same with the seller's attorney, make sure everything's done, organized, and smooth. So basically from when you sign that contract, the next time you're seeing anything about the company is when you're at closing, and at that point everything should be just you signing and getting a check or providing a check, and everything's good to go.
Sure. Do you work with a lot of investors or regular people?
Type of investors. So, you have the one-off investor who's just doing one and trying to build some wealth, or, you're working with ones who are trying to do 6, 7 a year. So, obviously working with you now years and your team and the FLIPLATINO group, it's been exciting to learn more and more because there's always
learn Spanish still. What do you say, what would you say to the Latino community and, to the FLIPLATINO family out there, that sometimes it's not easy to understand that, they need to be protected, whether a title, an attorney, or just know a little bit more,
Yeah, so there's a lot of, title insurance can be very difficult to understand. Even after being in a long time, understand underwriting and kind of what the process is, it can be very confusing and misleading. So
Sure.
For having a partner like Antonio or somebody else that really understands it, that's what helps you understand it better. And then obviously we have a lot of bilingual closers, bilingual underwriters that can kind of help coach people along the way so they can teach it to the closer. And then our closers are the ones where at the end of the day, they're working with the buyers and really kind of helping them understand some of the stuff that they may not, but always having a trusted ones who are really going to help them understand that process.
Yeah, no, and I understand, I mean, we've been partners, getting title and getting, all these people to refinance. And I really appreciate, what you guys do.
Well, thank you.
And like I say, most of the investors, or if you're an investor out there, you should work with a title company or with an attorney. Mm-hmm. And that's, something we do here. I mean, it's been great working with, Fidelity for the past 10 years probably. Uh-huh. And where can they find you or your information?
At Brandon James at fnf.com. And if you have my contact information, you can find me as bjames6847 on Instagram as well.
Great. I think it's a great information. People should know more about, title insurance, more about, lender insurance, all this stuff that we talk about. But if, they're looking for more information, obviously, the website for Fidelity, you guys have a lot of information there too.
Yeah, and you can always reach out to me if you have any questions, want to learn more. We get a lot of calls into our office where I'm talking with investors, and then I usually do guide them down the road to getting some more assistance. But I'm always available there to help, and I do want to really stress the importance of title insurance in order the amount of risk that you're taking away when you're making such a big decision and trying to build your wealth. You don't want these risks to do.
No, that's great. My people, mi gente, si les gustó este podcast y quieren aprender más sobre aseguranza de título, pues esta información la traemos. Brandon trabaja con FLIPLATINO, es uno de nuestros partners aquí en Illinois, pero también hacen en otros estados. So thank you, Brandon, for coming to FLIPLATINO Legendarios.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've been talking about it for a little while, so we'll have to do it again here soon.
Yeah, so thank you for coming, and thank you for the information. I think pleasure. This will be great for anybody, but especially for the Latino community who start investing, and will know a little bit more, about what, actually title means and and the risk, that we're taking when you do a quick lane.
Exactly. You're learning not to take the shortcuts, and learning some of the intricacies of title is always important. And I think it's something that will go a long way for the investor market. And obviously just always remembering to have that power team around you of people that already know it to really make sure you understand exactly what you're doing.
Great. Thank you. Si les gustó si les gustó este podcast y quieren compartirlo con alguien, compártanlo. Y síganos en YouTube, síganos en Facebook, en Instagram, FLIPLATINO.com o en YouTube, FLIPLATINO Legendarios. Saludos mi gente y seguimos aprendiendo. Nos vemos. Hasta la próxima.
Goodbye.